Hi friends, we live in an ever-changing world when we have an unchanging God. And what a consolation that is for us, right? And in the midst of all this change in our lives, and it's unavoidable, we all go through change, just even that we grow older is change, right? And our bodies change. But we have an unchanging God, and that should give us great hope. What do we hold to, though? Do we hold to the world, or do we hold to God? You know, as I said, the world's changing all around us, and part of the reason why it's in constant change is that it's a fallen, imperfect world. So there's going to be changing happening. Often coming from places like, people's lives that are fallen. So take for instance this, our current political environment, right? We have all kinds of things that are threatening stuff that is very important to us as Americans. Like, what's important to us? Our liberties are important to us. Our freedom is important to us. And so we've got politicians and national leaders and a lot of people who are behind them, like big money, big corporations. And what they're doing is, and this is nothing new, they're proposing bills and enacting laws and putting forward legislation that says, listen, we've got a solution. We've got an answer here. We've got a law that we're going to put in place that's going to make your life a lot better, right? And we're like, yeah, this is awesome. This is great. And so we put a lot of our faith in that. And then what happens when the actual law comes out, 3,000, 10,000 pages or whatever, you read the finer print, you begin to see that they're looking out more for themselves than they are for me. And in fact, what I've just signed over to them is more and more of my freedom and my liberties. I'm giving up what is sacrosanct to my life, my freedoms, by what? By allowing these changes to happen, right? I only offer this because it just shows that we live in a changing world. It's imperfect, it's fallen, and even in things that are as important to us as laws, this can get lived out. Where we have people who, so suppose we advocate for our freedoms, but really take away our freedoms. Okay, that's nothing new under the sun. Not just in our day and age, but in the day and age of the Bible. So let's go there. Let's go to the scriptures and let's look at Exodus 14. Here, the leader of the Egyptians is doing exactly as I just described. On one day, he says, I'm going to free you Israelites, right? Because of all the pressures that God has put upon him, the 10 plagues. And he's had it, and he's letting the Egyptians go. So off they go into the desert, and they're heading towards the Red Sea to cross it. But then the Egyptian leader wakes up the next day, the Pharaoh, and he's like, what have I done? This law I put into place, it's not good for me. It's good for them, but I'm losing all my slaves, right? And how am I going to build my pyramids? And how am I going to run my society, my economy? Because I'm sending all this cheap labor out the door. What have I done? So on one day he makes a promise and makes it law, and the next day he reneges on that law. And he sends out an army of his chariots and charioteers, so great in number that the Israelites are never going to overcome them. I mean, they're going to lose that battle. So they see Pharaoh and his armies coming towards them, and what happens? They say, are there not enough graves in Egypt that you had to lead us out here in the desert to die? They're being sarcastic. And what they're saying is, well, of course there's enough graves. I mean, there's the tombs of the pharaohs. So here we are, following you, God, and look what's happening. We might as well have just stayed in Egypt. Yeah, our liberties were stripped from us, but at least we were fed. Is that how we look at our lives as humans today? Yeah, our liberties one by one are being stripped from us, but at least I have a job, you know. At least my kid goes to school. At least I have food on my table. But all these sort of terrible things are happening around us, but at least I have what I need. Is that what we've come to? Where we're more of a self-centric society than an anthropocentric society, meaning a society concerned about other people other than myself, or here's one, a theocentric society, where God is the center and makes all things better than we ever could by our own human hands. Is this where we've reduced ourselves? Well, it certainly seems to be where the Israelites reduced themselves to. And the problem is that they were trusting more in the ways of this world than they were trusting in God. Even though they saw God save them through the 10 plagues, they saw God rescue them, they saw the powers that be in their hearts controlling the people, and they were willing to go back to that. Oh gosh, so God doesn't punish them. In fact, he tells Moses, this is exactly what he says, listen to this. Tell the people they don't have to do anything. I myself will fight for them, and you only need to remain still. What? So what Moses does is he raises the staff, the Red Sea is parted by the power of God, the Israelites pass through the Red Sea, the bottom of it dry shod, and then when the Egyptians try to overtake them, he allows the sea to overtake them, right? And that's what happens. And they're overtaken. When life is stacking up against us, when the powers that be keep wanting to change things and keep promising a better life for us, but then disappoint us, or even actually persecute us and try to control us and limit us, it's good for us to remember what God did for Israel on that day. Remember that all the good that God has done for us in our lives, it's just good for us to remember that. And remember that our road to freedom isn't dependent upon the laws of this land, upon the powers that be alone, but upon God and his promises. We need only remain still. By this I mean remain trusting in God, and that he can do anything for us and everything for us. But here's the deal. We have to let him do that. And to let him do that, as Israelites learn, we have to be willing to follow him. So God did this mighty act, but then the Israelites had to follow him. They had to follow him across the dry sea. And they had to follow him into the desert. And they had to follow him into the promised land. Right? And that's what we have to do. As things are changing around us, as promises are being made for a better life, but as liberties are being taken away from us, at the same time, in order to get that better life for me and for my family, we have to realize, no, the better life is with God. And to trust in that better life with God. And be willing to follow him wherever he leads us. Because ultimately where he wants to lead us is into the promised land. We live in an ever-changing world, but God never changes. And so we have to ask ourselves, are we going to follow a God who never changes, meaning who always keeps his promises? Or are we going to live according to the way of this world that is always making us promises and always breaking those promises? Until next time, friends.